A lot of people chase scale. I chase impact. I mean, it's what we do. And I won't have a trainer or somebody on my staff that doesn't.
As a business owner, as an entrepreneur, self-employed person, you have to put the safeguards in place for yourself to somehow distance those types of things from affecting your physical, emotional, and mental well-being, because they're going to happen. But also, it's kind of the same concept on the other side. When you do have that record month that you signed up this many new memberships, or I picked up this investment client that's, a really big thing for me, I can't get too high off of that either and let it affect my mental, physical well-being in that way either.
When you invest so much of your time into people and you want to see them be great. So, my advice to anybody that's looking for that career change is
The Mark Bigg Show.
What's up, everyone? Welcome back to another episode of the Mark Bigg Show, and a very special guest today, long-standing friend of mine and my family's as well. Super excited to have Seton Sheldon on the podcast today. Seton, thanks for joining me.
Thanks, brother. Appreciate it.
So Seton is a local businessman, business owner, and has an interesting journey just like we all do, and that's just kind of the idea of the whole podcast, right? Let's let people have a platform to share with people what they've done, what they've been through, what they're looking forward to, what they're currently doing, all that stuff. So for the people that don't know you, give them the 5-minute version of where you grew up, how you grew up, what you were about. You're obviously an ex-athlete, as I was too. Give them the 411.
Yeah, I'll try to summarize this the best I can. I was definitely born and raised Bowling Green, Kentucky. Christian home, family of 5. I'm the youngest of 3 older brothers and 1 little sister, which we all adore. And then played college ball, was known as a baseball player for a very, very long time. I think that's kind of where I met Mark initially. I was the bat boy. It was whenever Mark was playing, and when Mark was on the mound, we knew we were going to win. So it was a fun one. But so then, very inspired as a kid, because family full of athletes, they loved it. And so I kind of followed that footsteps, had a lot to live for in that regard, and then went to WKU. Went to junior college first, played in Southern Illinois. Thought I'd take my shot at going big time, and obviously not pay for school, which was fun. And then transitioned, got injured my sophomore year, transitioned into transferred to Western, played my last 2 years on the Hill. Told myself I wanted to get out of Bowling Green for a little bit. Left town within 2 days of my last final. Came back about 3 years later. Did a lot of studying and reflecting and realization on what I wanted to do, and then found Rockbox Fitness, and then opened up about 5.5 years ago or so now, and been hitting the ground running ever since. So.
I love it. So we'll dive into the business side of things in a little bit, but I always like hitting on. I just think that athletes and people that played beyond the high school level typically just have a different mentality than most, I would say, just because at that point it becomes a job, whether you are in college, whether it's professionally, whether it's independent in baseball, whatever it is, it's a job at that point, right? So it goes beyond just, I love the game, like you're there to do a job. So growing up in a family full of athletes and parents were business owners, stuff like that, do you think that kind of shaped you in the way that you kind of approach things differently than maybe most? And I honestly think one thing too that I think is important, like being a little brother, and you and I have talked about this on a golf course before, like being a little brother, like just the mentality is so different, because I was always trying to chase my older brother in the driveway and beat him in one-on-one, and I never could, and all that stuff. Yeah, and it just creates that, like, I got a chip on my shoulder mentality.
Oh, for sure. It was it didn't matter what it was when we were younger. Ping pong, pool,
walking up the steps.
I wanted to beat you. And for a long period of my life, I couldn't. It was just one of those things that, there's such thing as older brother strength and older brother, it's mentality. But it never stopped the chase in me. It never stopped, why I wanted to continue to be better. I'm a very competitive guy. I think if you know anybody around me, it's kind of just in my DNA, and that's what created it. It was, seeing Spence, get up 1,000 shots and me wanting to be just like that, or Seth being, insanely naturally gifted. It's I wanted to see that and watching them, going all the way back to being the bat boy. It was like I loved watching them succeed. I love watching them play, and I wanted to see myself through that journey as well. So it always gave me an edge, even to this day. It's so much fun.
I think those things carried forward. And the last guest that we had pitched in the big leagues for a while, and one of my favorite quotes from our discussion was that he can relate anything in life to baseball. And I think most athletes would probably say, regardless of what sport they're in, they could probably say the same thing. But I just think baseball is such a special sport in that regard that you can translate so many different areas of the game into what you face in everyday life, whether you're a business owner, whether you work for a corporate company, whatever the case may be. I just think that stuff carries over if you allow it to.
Oh, for sure. I had there's two things I want to mention about that. One was I lived with Matt Noakes. He was a catcher for the Yankees for about 10 years. My junior year of high school, I spent the entire summer with him in San Diego and lived in his house. And one, he's a very obsessive natured guy. But, he told me, he said, baseball players, especially when they get to a certain point, they are a lot more humble and they see the world differently than everybody else because, the cliche saying of you fail 7 out of 10 times you're in the Hall of Fame is you have to develop a reality around that. You have to be okay with failing X amount of times as long as you're going to come out on the other side of it. And it was eye-opening for me at that time, which I loved.
And then part of those 3 successes could be like, I got jammed, but it just happened to land over the second baseman's head, so it's a hit. So it's not even like you felt like you succeeded.
Right.
You got to be able to get kicked in the teeth.
That was a tough one. That was a tough one. And then second, to add to that is as you get older, you obviously mature a lot more and you understand what the sport meant to you and the time I spent in it. And I went to, it's if you ask me, some of the top things in my life that have changed me for who I am, it was junior college. It's like I went to a spot where all there was baseball. There was population of 3,000 people, one stoplight town, and 1,500 of the population was inmates. I lived.
Oh, wow.
I could drive a golf ball in the backyard of a maximum penitentiary.
Okay.
It was
That's
like in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah.
And
you got to love it if you're going to be there and do that.
You lived, you breathed it. I'm talking, didn't have lights on the field. We'd turn our truck lights on to pull a tarp at 3 a.m. It didn't matter. There's no rules in JUCO. No. And so it was, the younger version of me hated being there every second. I'll never forget coming home my freshman year and was like, Mom, I got to go somewhere different. Yeah. Like there's just, and about 7 months ago, I sat down and wrote a handwritten letter to that coach and said, thank you. I mean, it was the most, he was just amazing. It was what he taught me during that period of my life was things don't know if I'll ever be able to relate to again. And
those things take with you.
Didn't appreciate him as much while I was there. But, looking back, he changed my world, like of who I was, and how, blessed I was to even be there and in his presence because he cared. He made us work hard. And I mean, I just, he was one of the main reasons. And I sat down, wrote him a handwritten letter and said, thank you. I don't think you got that enough, because.
Oh, I'm sure he didn't. Being a JUCO coach, he probably just got a bunch of screw yous and never see you again and all that.
Literally, all the time.
So what was the transition like coming from a JUCO down to a program like Western? Obviously, it's in your backyard, hometown growing up, but, it's a good program. It's a historic program, beautiful facilities. Mm-hmm. Like, what was that transition like?
Yeah, that transition was pretty smooth. I think, especially for any younger person that thinks if they go to Western, they're still in their hometown, it's crazy because it's its own city. Yep. I mean, if you go to Western, you're in those, you're there, you don't really, like, when was the last time I've just gone down to campus? Hardly ever. It's like, unless there's a game going on or something, they live in their own world, and I didn't feel like I was in my hometown.
That's a great point, because I never felt that. I never went to Western, obviously, so I didn't know that. That's a great insight, honestly, selfishly.
It was awesome, and I really enjoyed it. Now, looking back, for a career standpoint, do I wish I would have, even if I walked on or even if I took, a lower scholarship, type deal to go to D1, right out of high school? I think for the sport of baseball, 100%, just because, the facilities alone and the people that you put yourself around. Like my junior year, if I went into, our training staff or anything and asked to be stretched out, the amenities alone, being able to get in cold plunges, hot tubs, back and forth, getting stretched out when you want, the plyo work, having the facilities open to you 24/7, I think for any, senior that's going into a D1 program, don't take it for granted.
Sure.
I mean, it is something that you don't even get when you're playing for the hot rods.
I would agree that a lot of people probably think out of high school, like, well, if I can't go D1, then like it's either D1 or bust. But like to your point, a lot of people may get discouraged if they get a small scholarship or a walk-on position. But that difference versus having maybe a half scholarship at a smaller school, just those things that you just mentioned alone could make all the difference for their career.
It can scale them so much quicker. You know, it's like I was never stronger, I was never faster, I never hit the ball further, I never threw the ball harder my junior year. I mean, it was night and day difference, because if I had, my interior delt was sore, it'd be like, hey, help me out. And they would immediately, Dr. Gaddy was great, and Doc E, when I was there my junior year to switch over to Dr. Gaddy, it was like, man, they would come up, he needs dry needling. Bang. Like, getting that now is, you have to go get prescribed. You got to go in. It's just a different world of what the scalability is in a D1 facility if you're dedicated to the game.
That's such a great perspective too, because a lot of people, like, I've interviewed a couple guys that just went straight out of high school to a D1, so they don't know any different. But it's so interesting hearing the difference in what a smaller school versus something like that. And Western is obviously probably considered, I guess, a mid-major. As a part of D1, so it's not an SEC school,
which is the new JUCO with all the portal and stuff.
But at the same time, they've got all the access to be able to have your body ready and recovered best
Some of the best in the country.
That's a big deal,
especially the new facility they're about to build.
Yep.
Come on, I mean that right there is a dream. It's a dream that it's like what I mentioned earlier is all the away players that play the hot rods, and they have those 6-game series. They stay in the hotels across from Rockbox, and they don't get any of that. They're hotel to hotel. Any farm league, I know it's on you.
Yep.
Go get better. And so the D1, just facilities, what you've got at your fingertips. Man, scale in college.
It's so hard to see that, though, I think, from a college-age kid to just walk into that and be able to have that perspective. And that's what I'm hoping, like, some of these things can, like, just hit people. Maybe they're in the middle of that, or they're in the middle of their recruiting path, or whatever that looks like, because it's so hard as an 18 to 20-year-old to be able to have that kind of perspective. Looking back's always, you realize how good you had it kind of thing. But it's hard for them to see that in the moment. So that's such a great perspective. When you felt or when you made the transition from JUCO to Western, did you feel the difference in like competition level as well on the field?
I think the main difference as far as competition, because JUCO, we won the GRAC, which is one of the best JUCO conferences in the country, and funny enough, we went up against Iowa Western, who is from the head coach is Coach Reardon now, that's at WKU. I played against him. He knew exactly who I was. I've had a couple meetings with him now. First of all, congrats to their season. Love that guy. Love the program. Love everything they've got going on. That stuff right there speaks volumes. He knows how to get the most out of his players. But
100%.
That, the transition as far as level of competition, the difference between D1 and JUCO was JUCO, you're going to see a dude once a week on the mound. D1, you're going to see one every night.
Yep.
It's your – I mean, we had, first 3-round draft picks that we would see. We just wouldn't see him. You're going to get an egg. You're going to get an egg occasionally, and I'm going to go pat my batting average.
Of course.
But when you did see that dude, you're like, this is big time.
This guy's got it.
And then you go play somebody like Rice, and you go play somebody like La Tech. That was incredible. You're like, okay,
these guys can play.
They're faithfully good, every single night, and you got to go out and compete, and that's where it was more fun to win, because every game matters. And it was I don't care if it was a Tuesday night game and we were throwing off against UK or Vandy or Louisville.
You want to win.
You want to win.
Period.
It was and that was the same perspective from the other side. It wasn't because it was a Tuesday night game. It was because, hey, every single person in that dugout wants you. It's like, and so the competitive nature of D1, I wish it was a little more. I think our chemistry when I was at Western was, it wasn't like the JUCO world. Is the year we won the GRAC, our conference, we didn't have a single, it was my sophomore year or my freshman year, we didn't have a single person that was signed D1, like at all. We were at D2 at best, but dude, we did life together.
Yeah.
It's like we wanted to fight for the guy that was fighting next to us.
And I think that's really a hard part in probably upper level D1 baseball, and then especially in the minor leagues, because, and I was talking to this, I forget who I was talking to it about, but the thing is like, if you and I are both pitchers, we can be boys, but like when you're in the minor leagues on the same team, like we're both not getting promoted at the same time.
We're both trying to get paid.
So there's a point in me that's like, I don't want you to fail because I love you and like you as a friend, but like if it comes at my expense of getting promoted, that's a hard place to be. So in the minor leagues, like, yeah, the team's there trying to win, but I tell people all the time, these minor league teams could go 0-140, and the front office does not care.
Yeah.
As long as they're producing guys that have major league talent.
Right.
And so it's hard to go out and be a cohesive unit on the field when if I'm one of 7 guys in the bullpen, they're going to call up one guy. They're not calling up 4 of us.
Right.
You know what I mean? So it's like I've got to be pitching my best at the right time and pitching better than the guys around me, and not necessarily want them to fail, but also like if it comes at my expense, once again, I'm trying to feed my family.
Absolutely. And
so that's the hard part of minor league ball.
Baseball itself, the sport itself makes it even harder, to your point, is because they put you in sections, right? It's you can't, not every day we were practicing with the whole team.
Right.
It's like pitchers are together, catchers are together, infield's together, outfield's together. So you spend a lot of time with the guy you're trying to beat out.
Literally.
And so that makes it even tougher because, it's hard. One, you want to enjoy yourself. You want to develop relationships that are going to last forever. And so when you are around the guy that could beat you out, there's got to be a mutual respect, but at the same time, when you get on that mound,
when we step in between these lines, it's business.
You got to have the edge.
That's the thing. And then when you're going into, minor league camp or something, it's hard for me just being the way that I am. Like coaches will be, preaching this teamwork stuff, this, that, and the other in spring training. And I'm like, with all due respect, this front office doesn't care if your team wins a game, right? Because you're trying to develop big league talent to go help the big league club in Toronto.
Right.
It doesn't matter if Lansing wins the Midwest League. It doesn't matter if New Hampshire wins the Eastern League. It matters not. Yeah. And so, like, preaching all that and spending all that time is just it was so frustrating to me because I'm like, truly, y'all don't care, nor should you. Therefore, I shouldn't care. Right. I should be mastering my craft, trying to get as good as I can so that I can get promoted.
Right.
And then I can eventually help the major league team.
Right.
Because at the end of the day, and even when you get to the big leagues, I mean, those guys, they're out there to either satisfy their contract, justify the contract that they just got, or they're on the end of their current one trying to get another one. Right. Or they're breaking in trying to get their first one. So unless you have a team full of veterans that's already experienced in a winning club, winning at one point doesn't matter at the big league level either.
Right.
As crazy as that sounds.
It's taken the game of baseball and it's really individualized it.
Yep.
It's taken, and I think, and that's why you have to appreciate the show because you're going, that team's winning and they probably never had the bond that I've experienced at a JUCO level.
That's it.
It's like, it's something that is very hard to really, understand if you didn't play the game, but it's so cool to watch how talented they are when they don't have that chemistry.
Yeah.
It's like pretty incredible. It's like watching Cano go from the Yankees to the Mets and dude's balling out already, and you're going, it's crazy.
Yeah,
he just went to his main competitor, didn't know a single person on the team, steps in the box, and he's still an absolute dog.
He is.
It's
the way that the one thing that I want to always commend, and I post stuff every now and then when I see it, but like infielders and hitters, those guys are just stupid talented. The guys up the middle on major league fields, their talent level is outrageous. And then the major league hitters, and I don't care if it's the leadoff guy or the 9-hole hitter, if you throw a pitch that is over the middle of the plate, that is not at the knees, and sometimes even there, it is hitting a barrel.
Yeah.
They do not miss when you make one mistake. Right. And it is insane to watch. Yeah. And people don't watch the game like that, and I understand that because I'm kind of a geek in that, frame of it. But like the talent level there is just, it's unmatched. And you make one mistake and it hits a barrel every time.
For sure. I mean, and Paul Kilgus was a great mentor of mine, and you're going, he's played on, multiple different teams and stuff like that, and you're, watching his pitching performance, and he's going, those guys can play. It's like, that's what he said every single time. He was like, it doesn't matter how good I was and how great I was.
Nope.
On both sides of the field, it's an offensive game, more than it's ever been at this point. So pitchers have to be better. But at the same time, that defense behind you ain't so bad either.
They're pretty darn good.
They're pretty dang good. And so that was big for me as far as, watching the game develop, and now even crazier because, I am in the life of training athletes and watching people grow from, junior to senior to into D1 or into D2, D3, wherever you are. And it's very hard to even get them to see the perspective. It's like anything in life, it's like this, it's the maturity of the journey that's very hard to understand when
especially while you're in the thick of it. Yeah. So transition out of like athletics, like going into, you said you took some time away from BG. I would say, what did you I'd love to know what you learned the most about yourself and about the community that we're in for the time that you had spent away. Because selfishly, I feel like I have a good sense of what it's like to be away from here too, having been gone playing pro ball and stuff, been all over the place, been away from home, lived in different parts of the country. So like I appreciate different things about it for that reason, but I'd be interested to hear your take.
Yeah, so it all goes back to the original point. When you grow up in a smaller town, it's obviously getting a lot bigger, but now, when we were in high schools are still well connected in Bowling Green and stuff like that. But when you're in Bowling Green, Kentucky, and you have a family that has gone before you. You have a dad that worked really, really hard to be successful, coming from nothing, so you try to paint this picture, right? You start trying to see this through, and you're watching, my oldest brother, going to Daviess County. My mom went to Warren East. Dad went to Owensboro High. My older brother went to Daviess County. Seth went to Greenwood. Spence went to Warren Central. And then here I am at Bowling Green, right? And the reason we did that is because, we didn't want to walk in anybody else's path. We didn't want to be the shadow, and not that I didn't respect that. I think I have a great appreciation for all my family, but, at that point in time in my life was, I didn't want to be known as Seth's little brother or Spence's little brother
100%.
Or Steve's kid. It's the little brother edge that I never let go of.
Yep.
And I had to go prove to myself that I could do it on my own. Like I didn't want the level up, and I didn't want the camaraderie around, what we dealt with as kids to be enhanced any more than it had to be. And so I took it on myself to go see who Seton was. I needed to figure out who I was deep down because, like, for 20 years of my life, I was Seton Sheldon, the baseball player.
Of course.
You couldn't put any other sentence in a name without baseball. It's like, it's what I was known for. It's what I did. I lived and breathed it, and outside of the publicity of it all, it's like, that was who I was. I woke up every single day, and I know you did too, is we did something to get better.
100%.
It was visualization. It was, working out. It was being the best I possibly could to perfect my craft. And so, and it is a dream of mine to go and talk to athletes that have that transition, because it is, it's an identity thing that you have to figure out
100%.
to come into your own, to be successful. There is a part of at one point in your life, when you choose to move on, you choose to hang up the cleats, you have to move past that. And it's hard. It was hard. I was, a year past, and I felt like I could walk into WKU's locker room and feel normal.
Yeah.
Like I just got practice that day.
Like I took the next question right out of my mouth, because I was wondering if you had a hard time moving on from that, because so many people do. And I played with so many guys, even at the lower levels of the minor leagues, maybe they only played for a year, that you could just tell, like, when it was over, they were going to have a really hard time figuring out what was next.
It's very tough. And that was big, having that support system. The average person changes careers about 13 times. So, my advice to anybody that's looking for that career change is, it's never about what you're going to do. It's about what you're going to do next. It has, whatever it is, wherever you land in this world, it has nothing to do with what you're going to do next. And so, create opportunities for yourself, walk through some doors, check some stuff out, and go be the best at it, And so that was hard for me, because I was like, man, I need to do this. I need to do this immediately. Right. It's like, I was good in this sport. I don't want to be bad at something.
And so I should walk right in and be good at whatever else is next.
It was hard because, I worked hard to be good at something. And then now you've got to, change that career path to, okay, let's take a good step forward here to figure out who I am, what I want to do. And it doesn't have to be a forever thing. Yeah. Let's just go be great at the next. And
it's a different world too, because I think in the generation that our parents grew up in, it was almost like looked down upon if you changed careers, if you changed jobs. Like it was almost like a negative if you had 4 things on your resume that you've done in the past 8 years. And I think we're just in a different world now.
Oh, for sure.
People need to be able to try different things, taste different things, see what they like, see where they excel, see where they don't. Like there's just so much opportunity out there that you can't be scared to make a change if you feel like that it's right for you and your family.
Oh, for sure. And I think that was the biggest thing for me. It was, who was I? What do I need to do to be great? And so I moved. I took a job in the island of Nantucket in Massachusetts. I looked after 2 beautiful kiddos. 6 months later, I got into property management. 6 months after that, I got into medical sales. And so I had 3 gigs going up there, to where I kept just being the best. I kept, or just what I thought was,
Sure.
my best effort.
Best version of yourself.
It's best version of myself for sure. And so, as you go through that, it was, nobody knew me from Adam. It's like 20 billionaires live on that island year round.
And it's a fresh breath of fresh air, I'm sure, for you.
It was the best. It was absolutely the best. So when people started to understand who I was and come up to me and shake my hand, and they would call me Seton, and they would look me in the eye and have that mutual respect for me, it fulfilled something in my heart that, it could have been, immaturity type deal, but at that point in my life, I needed that reassurance.
100%.
I needed the fact that I could take steps forward, and I knew that I had something within me that could see the other side of it.
Well, you could stand on your own 2 feet and have some version of what you feel like is success.
Right? It was, right. It was the best. And when I went, so then when I, it was almost, you could call it an insecurity. So when I overcame that, it became a lot easier to move back to Bowling Green.
100%.
And walk in my shoes and push the needle the right way, but while having, an amazing support system around me. It was a, I was about 2 years in, and, my mentor, he owns a real estate company on Nantucket, which is, Nantucket and Montauk's the, 2 highest real estate in the entire country. And, just had a lot of sit downs with him on what the next was. And he was a, big part of my life, and watching the discipline of the North is amazing, by the way. And, just seeing things through, letting me be me, and letting me, walk through some different ventures while I was there was so amazing. And then, one day you wake up and you go, did I love the people I was with? Absolutely. I could call them right now and have a great relationship, but life's too short not to be around people you love and care about. When you throw the success aside, you throw who you are aside, and you become more palm up, and are there for people. And I want to go to breakfast with my grandfather every Friday morning at lunchbox. I want to be able to go to my mom's house when I can. It's when you start looking at life a little differently, it was an easy choice to come back home.
Well, success looks different to you too. Once you feel like you're comfortable in your own skin, you can stand on your own 2 feet and be successful, whatever that looks like to you.
Correct.
So when you move back, what does that transition look like from moving back and then eventually finding your current home as the owner of Rockbox Fitness? What does that period look like?
Yeah, so that was a really crazy season of my life. I came back home, have all this money saved up, because that was my goal. I was going to put enough money back to where I could come home and I could buy a house.
Sure.
And I come back. Next thing you know, the more you learn is I had 2 different incomes. I had, W-9 and a W-2,
Sure.
And you have to have them both on the same to be able to afford a home. And I was going, dang it, like I just worked my tail off, saved a bunch of money up, was ready to hit the ground running when I got to Bowling Green, and here we go. I'm paused in my tracks, and so went to my pops and was just like, what do I think? I was in, medical sales as far as Eastern medicine, holistic health, healing the body the natural way. And I loved the relationships that I had. I dealt with, a lot of people with chronic arthritis, Lyme disease, cancer. And so I developed relationships with people, and I loved it. And so and helping them on the journey and seeing them through and seeing them heal was something that I truly enjoyed. And so when I came back, I didn't know. So I started part-time training with Jamie Link. And then my dad looked at me and was like, well, look, you can stay with us, but you got to do the landscaping, which, as you all know, we lived on 22 acres.
That's a full-time job.
It was, I was on a tractor for, 2 days straight. I was, but at that point, take all that out of it, the time I spent during that. And this is why it's so crucial to, understand the seasons for what they are. And I knew that was going to be a learning curve. And so you couldn't have caught me out on that property, whether I was pulling weeds or weed eating or whatever, without my AirPods in, listening to podcasts, listening to what I was growing myself to be. I wanted to, I was never going to, stay in the same place. I was never going to feel myself going backwards.
Sure.
And so I kept learning as much as I possibly could. I was Dr. Stephen Cabral. I still listen to him every morning, and I listened every day to something different, and I just kept increasing my skills. So then I knew I wanted, team. I wanted a team because that's what baseball was.
Yep.
That's, I wanted I didn't want a big staff. I was never good at not that I couldn't, but I was never good at the small talk. I was never, you get Spence Sheldon in a room for 2 minutes. He's the funniest. He can win you over. I was never good at I have to have time with you. I've got to be able to invest. I've got to be able to have, genuine conversations where we can sit down, and talk. And so, at that point, obviously the family's into franchising. We're looking into different franchises. I'm looking at different things I want to do. And, so about 6 months after, taking care of the yard and living with the family, to where I had to continue to keep my mental on, this is not a step back. This is making the right call for yourself.
For sure.
And I went from the bottom of Illinois. I went up to visit my coach at JUCO, and I went all the way down to the Keys in Florida, and I visited every single boutique fitness place I could possibly find. I walked in the door to every single one of them, shook their hand, had meetings with managers, and wanted to find what Bowling Green needed the most, and so got a ton of data, come all the way back up. I'm on an 18-hour drive back up. I'll never forget it. And we know our phones are listening to us. And so I'm pulled over. I'm dead dog tired, and scrolling through my phone. Here we go. Rockbox pops up. Never heard of it. And I'm just going, man, I've visited so many different, it's like, I just want to go home.
Right.
Like I was ready to be home. I was ready to be in my own bed. I was in hotels, and so I, picked up the phone and called them. Why not? And next thing you know, the closest one's in Murfreesboro. And I'm like, all right, here we go. I might as well stop.
At least that's halfway on the way home, maybe.
Yeah, it was closer. And so, went on my way, stopped into Murfreesboro, walk in the front door, and the owner of the place was on the front cover of Men's Health magazine. And I went, Seton, wake up. I was like,
look alive, man.
I was like, and I'm just like baffled. And so, when I got about 15 minutes with him, his name's Craig Caperso. He's still a great mentor of mine today. And I got to talk, and I said, why? Why this? Why, for all the different, we're talking about a guy that is that lived in your brother's world for a while, stage performance,
yep.
Body physique, looking, his body's an anatomy lesson. Like, it is crazy.
He's a freak, huh?
And I was just an absolute animal. And I'm just looking at him going, why? And he said, the product itself speaks for itself. And, not to get into all those details, but kind of, got me really thinking, like, okay, this is fun. And then the next step of that was, Shelby, Spence's wife, lived in Nashville, Hendersonville area for a long time, and was going to the Title Boxing that was in Nashville. And Spence hits me up, was like, dude, Title would be so cool to bring to town. And I'm like, okay. But then I just visited 15 Title Boxings that were not doing very well.
Right. And you didn't love it, probably.
And I didn't really. It just wasn't me. And it just is what it is. And so, finally, Shelby connected me and Tyler, who's the owner of Title Nash, where Theo Vaughn works out, Eddie George. Morgan Wallen's there. It's you walk in that place. It's the commercial of the Nike commercial of the girl doing the pistol squat with the prosthetic leg. She's their front desk, and I'm just going, this is the real deal. This is awesome. And so I got 15 minutes with him, and I'm going, what makes you different? And what he was doing was he was doing HIIT style training in the back. He extended it. Title's turning a blind eye to it because he was producing so much money, because everybody fell in love with the product, and then they would jump into boxing on the other side. And so when I looked at Rockbox for exactly what it is, it's functional fitness with lifting, with boxing as your cardio. And I was like, that's it.
This can work.
This is exactly. This is the biggest boxing / boutique gym in the country, is Title Nash, and I said this is the exact concept that he was going for, just a little smaller scale, a little different environment, and I fell in love with it, and then started following through those footsteps, and then COVID hits.
Yeah. So aside from COVID, obviously, what would you say your biggest challenge has been? Owning a franchise, owning a business, having staff, employees, trying to get business off the ground. Like, talk through some of those things for us. Like, what's been your biggest challenges there?
Yeah, I think my biggest challenges, you got to ride this journey. You got to ride the waves of the highs and lows. We started off as, it's kind of like anything in Bowling Green. When anything comes to town, it's the shiny new toy.
Of course.
And we want to be Nashville. And so we go find out, what is it? Because Bowling Green has lacked culture for a long time, because we've been known as, all these eating places. And now that we are getting, more healthy communities, and now that we're getting more, things to do outside of, going to eat, people are curious. And I think it is a need for Bowling Green, Kentucky. But, you open up floodgates, here we go.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And so it was that, I didn't lack the presence. I didn't lack the hard work. That was never going to be the case. I took it on myself that we were going to fail or succeed on my back.
For sure.
And if it went down, I had to live with myself. And so, we went 100 mile an hour. And I think that was probably part of it. When you get that much volume, we opened with more members than anybody in the country for any rock box ever. I mean, we were getting, and I fell in love with it. It was, my CEO was like, you should be able to, sell a membership within 15 minutes if you're good at it and all this stuff. And man, that initial 6 weeks of pre-sales, we laughed, we cried, we sang, we had the best time getting to know one another.
Yep.
And so getting off the ground and getting to a spot where you're like, man, this is amazing with what it still is, in my opinion, the best staff. It was fun, but the challenges come when things hit you that I was not expecting. Right. I've never ran a business before. I've never, I'm learning as I go as well.
There's no handbook for that in case anyone ever asks.
Right.
There's not.
And so, you want to do the absolute best you can, which I'm a big believer in being present.
Yep.
If you're present, you're showing up, it's never going to be as bad as if you're not there.
That's a fact.
And so I walk in those doors every day, and COVID was a big one, just because you open your doors with your hands tied behind your back. I was 25% capacity for
People
2 or 3
stay
months.
this far away from each other, blah, blah, blah.
And you look at all these people and you're going, you want to invest in their health. You care about them. You want to see, them change their life. And then you're going, sorry, we've got to be 6 feet apart.
Yeah.
We've got to check temperatures at the door. And that was a hard obstacle for me for the communication aspect, because I wanted to invest in them, but the limitations, I couldn't.
Really prohibited that.
It was tough. And so when we got past that was great. Staffing for me was tough. I've always taken pride in being able to read people, but at the same time, your motivated people that are going to make a difference in your business are not going to be sitting on the couch, right?
Yeah,
and so it was one of those things, you had to go out and find them. You had to go out and you had to grind for that staff. And so that was difficult in itself, but I think the good Lord took care of me there when things started happening, which is a part of being present. Opportunity doesn't, show itself until you're in there getting.
But then also, to your point too, those people aren't sitting on the couch, but they're also out looking and seeking for good opportunities. So if you've got something that is going to be good for them, it's a good environment. When people feel, I guess, welcomed, they feel heard, they feel seen, and they feel like they can kind of grow in their own inside of a corporate workplace or any workplace for that matter, small business, whatever. People want that. They gravitate to that. So then that's going to help you find those people that you want there too.
And that was the easy part. I felt like, as far as creating an environment where they love to be there. Yep. It's like I look at my head trainer all the time now, Hillary, which is amazing. And I'm like, look, the day you walk in that door where you're just not happy, I better get a phone call.
Yep.
It's like, because that's never what it was about. It's never what it's going to be about. It's like there's no dollar sign that I could ever want for myself to ever put my people to where they're not enjoying changing people's lives.
100%.
And so the staffing side of things became, a big learning curve for me, because I went out and found, I am, I'm an Enneagram 2. I take care of people. I want to help them. And so I'm looking and I'm going, man, that person's got a ton of potential. And so you start investing a lot of time. And I had to learn the hard way that you don't hire unmotivated people and try to motivate them.
No, you can't do that.
You hire motivated people and you give them the tools to be great. And that was a tough one early on. It really was, because I went through a lot of not a ton. I don't have a ton of staff, turnover. I've got, great retention on employees, which is great. But that was definitely a learning curve for me, as far as I had to take the ball out of my court a little bit.
Well, you also see somebody for what they could be, not just where they're sitting currently. Mm-hmm. And so you're like, well, if I can instill some of these things in you, help you, kind of encourage you, you can blossom into ABC 1, 2, 3. But to your point, if they're not motivated and want that for themselves, you can't do that for them.
It's very hard. Yeah. It's very hard. But if I had to locate, and just to try to get to the bottom of the question, the hardest challenge for me would have had to have been, it was just the period of time where I needed the business to go certain directions, and learning how to get the entire team and to let them trust me. Like that was a big one, because like I said, I was going to fail or succeed on my back,
Yep.
because that's the only way I could put my head down at night. And so I Pops has always told me, we do business through relationships. If I don't know their uncle's dog's name, I'm behind.
Yep.
Like that was just where I was. And so my first 6 months of the business, I lived, I breathed it. I could not I couldn't find the balance. I couldn't, I'm filling everybody else's cup. And, my mom looked at me and was like, who's filling your cup? I got down to about 150 pounds. I wasn't eating. I was doing everything I could for these people. And, next thing I've helped people take 2.5 feet circumference off their body, and then they'll go, bye, I'm going to another gym. And my biggest quality, my biggest character trait for me, for my friendships, is loyalty.
Yep.
Like, I grew up with 3 older brothers. You could cuss me up one ear and down the other, and I'm just going, doesn't mean anything to me.
Yep.
But when you invest so much of your time into people, and you want to see them be great, and then, next thing you know, they're
out the door.
They're out the door, and they're doing things that they weren't doing with me. It was hurtful. It was very hurtful, and it took a toll.
Let me drill down on that, because that is a phenomenal point, and it's so hard for anyone else to understand that, because to them, they're like, oh, well, that's just one membership. You can replace that back in 3 days. But it's not about the money that they pay for your membership. Yep. It's about the time you've invested with them, the relationship you've built, and then that person. It's not. I don't want to say that person doesn't care enough, but like the loyalty, just for whatever reason, wasn't there, and when they walk out the door, that freaking stings, man.
It's tough. One membership will never make or break me.
But it's like when one tax client leaves my office for whatever reason, and most of the time it's just like, hey, this changed, that changed. Right. I've got this relationship here or there. Oh, much. I totally get it. Whatever. And it's not the fact of, once again, one client's going to make or break the business, but it's just like, man, did they not feel the same loyalty that I felt to them? You know what I mean? Or I felt like I've poured this into them, helped them get to this point, save them this, do that. Those things hurt.
It was a tough change in my life. It was so tough, because at that point I had to look at the business differently as a whole. You have to. I could, because I had to protect my mental.
Yeah. Or else you do it at the expense of yourself.
Right. Or I was going to spiral.
That's it.
And that was the hardest part by a landslide. We got on these calls, once a week with other, they put you in franchise groups, and you get on these calls, and I was just like, yo, I need the floor for a second. And I just kind of vented and told them, what my experiences were when I was going through this and investing so hard and wanting to be there for them every step of the way. It doesn't matter if you texted me at 1 a.m. or 4 a.m. in the morning, I was going to be there. Yep. And I didn't protect my own peace. I didn't protect my own sanity. I didn't protect my own happiness. And that was just such a hard change, because now you still want to do that. You never take your eye off of what makes you you.
Correct.
But at the same time, I had to, change my perspective on the business to, okay, this is where you go. There's a level to where you protect your heart. It's one of those things. It's like, I'm going to invest. I'm going to do everything I possibly can, still will to this day, but I'm just not going to let it affect me, anymore. And so you just start being a little more guarded. Now, my members that have been with me 5-6 years, absolutely.
And it's not that it wouldn't gut you if one of them left, but it's like when you have these experiences and you really take the time to internalize it, as a business owner, as an entrepreneur, self-employed person, whatever, you have to put the safeguards in place for yourself to somehow distance those types of things from affecting your physical, emotional, and like mental well-being.
Right.
Because they're going to happen. But also, it's kind of the same concept on the other side. When you do have that record month that you signed up this many new memberships, or I picked up this investment client that's, a really big thing for me, I can't get too high off of that either and let it affect my mental, physical well-being in that way either.
Even kill. Yeah.
But that goes back to the baseball thing, right?
Absolutely.
Because as a hitter, as a pitcher, you're going to go through a month where you're just cruising. Everything feels good. Your body feels good. Even when you don't have your best stuff, you're getting guys out, or you're still getting base hits even when you don't make solid contact. But you're going to hit that month too where everything you throw across the plate is getting a barrel hit on it. Everything that you put in play is hit right at somebody. So that goes back to the baseball and athlete thing for me. It's just like you can't get too high and too low.
No, it's so important. It was, like I said, it was the biggest thing for me to understand as a business owner. It was something that took time. It was nothing that, and for the audience, it's one of those things. It's when you have a gym and you have a boutique fitness industry, I'm giving people, well, not me, Rockbox, the staff, my team is giving people the space to cope in a healthy way.
100%.
Right? It's if I can keep you from going to the bar, or
Yep.
if I can keep you from going to things that are distracting you, which is, how I talk to my staff all the time is, if I can give that option, I want to give that option, and so it's a lot of, everybody in the world is dealing with something, everybody. And so, when they show up at your door and you're giving them a space to, cope healthily, there's nothing more in the world where you just don't love on them and meet them right where they're at, because the gym industry in general has a tough connotation of getting to that front door.
Of course.
It's a very intimidating thing.
It is.
And so we have to, I tell every single one of my staff, we got to cradle them like a baby from the first time they walk in to the time they walk out, because everybody's dealing with something, and you want to get to know them, but there is, there's just now, there's just a level where we have to kind of refrain to hold the culture together, because, people want to go deep, which is healthy. It's not that I've ever been, but I do know just through studying it is what's the first thing they tell you to do when you walk into a rehab facility. Let's talk about it.
Yep.
And so if I can give somebody the opportunity to take their insecurities, put them right on the table, and then own them and develop, it's we look for the person that starts on the far end of the gym in the bag,
Yep.
keep themselves in the dark, and then you'll watch them over
slowly just creep their way
slowly
up.
put themselves
Because they
become more comfortable. And that's the way I teach my staff is, will I celebrate every extra push-up? Will I ever, celebrate every extra box jump, every milestone you complete by a performance base? Absolutely. But our main objective is to, make yourself feel comfortable in your own skin, feel empowered, be self-confident in who you are. If that is boutique fitness at its core, and that is what we do.
And I'll tell you, that framework of a mentality from the top down is what will continue to drive business success for you in all reality.
A lot of people chase scale.
Yep.
I chase impact. I mean, it's what we do. I mean, and I won't have a trainer or somebody on my staff that doesn't.
Yep.
It's what we are trying to develop somebody, and that's why we've got to peel the onion back a little bit. We've got to, man, I'm nervous to take my shirt off by the pool. Well, why? Let's take it one step deeper. Who's there that you're worried about that's going to judge you?
Sure.
Who's there that you think in the back? Then we keep going. And then that's why we get to a point where the ownership and who you are and the way God made you is so beautiful, because when you overcome and you see the other side of health, when you get the mental clarity, you get the energy, you start eating healthier, you start looking a little better, you start getting the results to this side, I promise you'll never want to go back.
No, it affects the other areas of your life in such a positive way.
Massive. And it's we have to be the hope. It's everything outside of our doors, which is, more service-based needs, is out to get you. There's more propaganda than ever.
Yep.
There's more things that are trying to draw you in than ever. The vaping industry is $1 billion industry. So why are we feeling guilty of having a premium membership to where you care, to having, to asking somebody to go, hey, let's start this health journey? My staff should never not feel confident to
100%.
ask somebody to get on a health journey.
But it's a different shift in the mindset from their perspective too.
Absolutely.
Just
and
to
that's,
your point.
and that's a hard,
Yeah.
barrier to get through, because, it's like, oh, but we take a psychology approach. It's the more you pay attention. If I was driving a Ferrari outside and I back into a light post, I'm getting out and I'm sick. I'm like, oh my gosh. Like,
What are we going to do? Yep.
If I'm driving a 1960 old Ford and I hit that light post,
Who cares?
I'm driving
We're
off.
still running.
We're
It's
still
fine.
good. And that's why boutique fitness was developed, is because we know that the more you pay attention, you're going to show up. And that's all that matters.
Makes all sense to me.
And you're going, oh, it's a little expensive. Well, let me tell you what else is expensive. When you do have to have things that, co-pays that help,
that could have been prevented.
Proactive. If you can get things, if you can be ahead of the 8 ball on your health, it could save you thousands and
Tens of thousands, probably.
and thousands of dollars
And time that you may not. know that you weren't going to
It's
get. You know?
exactly, and being able to, and that's the testimonies you love.
Yeah.
It's the person that says, I was able to carry my 3-year-old up the steps for
Yeah.
the first time. I was able to go outside and throw football with my kid for the first time, in a long time. I had energy after work to go and invest in my kids and being able to take them to practice. And man, like that stuff is so amazing, and that's what keeps you moving, in the right direction when you
I
get
was going to
people.
say what I was going to ask. One of the questions at one point that popped in my head was what motivates you and keeps you driven. But I think the audience is very clear right there what does. So I'll ask you this: continuing to grow your business and deepen those relationships, obviously, is at the forefront of your brain as it should be. Anything else on your mind at this point is what's next for Seton? What he's got, future plans, what you're looking forward to, anything like that that's on the forefront of your brain that you want the audience to know about?
Yeah, this is the beauty of being the younger of 3 siblings that have gone before their own businesses, that have done different things, and I've had the opportunity to double down to where I could open up a rock box in Hendersonville or Owensboro, and I was even entertaining doing a regional thing for a long time where I was going to do 5, and but then when you watch somebody that works as hard as your brother, and when he's on the road and he's in, because he's going to bend over backwards to be the best he can be, and you watch his quality of life when he took on things that were not as not convenient, but like his time was taken to where he had to be on the road, where he had to do other things because it's harder. It just is.
Can't be in 2 places at once.
It's very tough. You can't duplicate yourself, and it's very hard to find, good staff. And when you're dealing with a lot of those little minute things, it kind of takes the 8 ball of, what is your mission? And so when I got to see that, it kind of kind of brought me back to, okay, what is something that I really love and care about, what I do right here in Bowling Green, Kentucky. And the best part about Bowling Green, Kentucky, man, in my opinion, in my space, is people are still listening.
Yeah.
They will sit across the table from you and be like, okay, I want to know more. I want to invest in my health. I want to be better. When you get into bigger markets, it becomes more trendy. It becomes like, I'm going to gym hop and I'm going to do this.
Probably harder to connect, I would say.
Right. And so, it's just like my mom with curbside. It's like, not that I don't think the mission field's amazing, but, there's people in our backyard that can continue to improve health. And, and so the next step for me was finding something that really complements Rockbox. And I know, and our main goals are to, keep you younger longer, keep you in full range of motion, not get stiff. Obesity is directly related to an inactive lifestyle. And so you want to keep people moving their bodies. I tell people, take an hour every day. I don't care if it's sitting down and drinking water. I don't care if it's sitting down and reading a book or journaling or stretching or anything that's going to better your health. Take that hour.
Sure.
It's and you can relate it a lot to biblical beliefs with quiet time. It's something that you yourself need to own and to benefit yourself on an everyday basis. And so when I know, that I love Rockbox, we've got a great thing going, and I know we've still got people listening who want true change and want people to invest in them, because it's not really, hey, this is what you're going to do. It's more along the lines of, we're going to guide you through this journey. I tell people all the time, if I had 100 people in this room and I went to AmericanHealthAssociation.com and said, here's the picture perfect diet, in 365 days, they would all be different sizes.
No, guaranteed.
And so our job in our world is, let's learn more about you. What food makes you tick, where are you getting extra energy from, what works best for your digestive system, and helping you learn yourself more and more. And so when you get people that are very invested in their health and want to do more, I had to go recovery, and I had to, so I took over Sweat Studio in December, and it parallels great because it's, the body needs physical stress 3 to 4 times a week, up to 30 minutes at a time.
Yep.
That is what it takes to live a long and healthy life. But on top of that, there's other things that we could be doing. Infrared saunas they're next to gold. They're amazing. They benefit the body in a million different ways, eliminate diseases, risk of diseases, I should say. And so I wanted to go, recovery side, because not that the market wouldn't be big enough for me to put up, a smaller tier bag system of another, location of Rockbox on the other side of town. I looked at my brothers and the people that went before me, and I'm looking, where's my biggest impact? I'm already spending 50 to 60 hours a week right here in this space. So I took the opportunity to take over Sweat Studio in December. And now, going full infrared sauna, cold plunges, red light therapy, personalized stretching to where, and the vision's bright, man. I've got a sister in functional medicine, and I want to be able to, and my best friend's in physical therapy. I want it all under the same roof. I want it, Josh is doing very, very, similar stuff in a great aspect of it, because that's what it is. You want to be able to go to one spot,
100%.
Because we deal with that all the time. Somebody comes to us for a gym membership, then they're walking in, a vitamin shop or, GNC, buying all these supplements. Then they're going here to buy their gear, and then they're going here to get, let's relate it back to baseball. My best seasons of baseball were when I had one coach, when I listened to one person. I didn't go get lessons.
It's not all these other outside opinions.
Nope. I didn't go get lessons. It's like there was multiple seasons in my life where I would get lessons from multiple people, and I just was always in a funk. And
well, you're in the box and your third base coach didn't give you the lesson, and he's telling you to do something different, and then you walk back in the dugout and your head coach is telling you something different.
Right. And so I'm taking my past experiences, through baseball, and I'm going to relate them to health, because I don't need, it's to benefit the human body the best. Let's just get used to coming to the same spot.
Yep.
Let's get, health is routine. Discipline is discipline, routine, health. They all go hand in hand to where it's okay. Like, let's get, and people don't love change. The most loyal businesses in the world are what? Car washes, automotive places, and gyms. Oh, and salons. And so, I need and want that loyalty, and I want them to be able to benefit and have tons of value all the way across the board. And I know that that's where this health wave is coming from. It's alcohol sales and nicotine sales are at an all-time low across the country, especially in teenagers. It is not that they should be drinking, but I'm just saying it's Nashville's at an all-time low, and I know that for a fact. And so you're wanting to see this health wave. You're wanting to take, people in, guide them in the right direction, and you don't want them to be listening to all these TikTok reels and all. It's,
you want somebody that cares about them, can invest in the relationship, and all that.
It'll never change.
Well, I'm super excited to see the vision that you've caught and the wave that you're riding. I'm proud of you, and it's no shock to me as to why you had the success in athletics for your baseball career, and then the success that you've had to this point. It's no shock to me, so I'm excited to see where the journey takes you, man.
Absolutely, man. It's I got one story. I couldn't not get off the pod without telling this story, and I've told you now multiple times, but me and Mark were obviously around the baseball diamond for quite a while, and whether I was playing or wasn't playing, I was always a fan. But I got to I was in middle school. I was playing for the Gators, Drakes Creek, and they asked me to come and catch. I was a catcher, and they asked me to come catch at a pro day at WKU, and I was like, oh yeah, it was me and my buddy Kent Smith, and we went out to WKU's field. We're fired up. We're the young guns in there, and obviously we were living in the bullpen. Nothing was really happening, and we're warming up all these pitchers, and it's great. I mean, nothing really that bad. Doing some short mound and all that stuff, but next thing you know, all these scouts are in the stands. Mark gets the nod. Him and another, it might have been Jack Snodgrass. I don't know. There was somebody. The two top pitchers were going in at the end, and they're like, "You got one more in you?" And I'm like, "Absolutely." And I was like, "I've known Mark my whole life. It's awesome." And so I run down there. I start warming Mark up, and obviously his arm action's a little different than what I was used to at the time, being in 8th grade. And and obviously, I mean, Mark's got 30 scouts in the stands. So I mean, his adrenaline's pumping. He's ready to go out there.
Up.
He's ready to go out and perform. And that first fastball, it hits my mitt and then just drills me in the chest. Like I could not stop the ball, and it hits me so hard, and I was just like, I lost my breath. And man, this goes to show you the character of Mark. He was like, he waved me up like he's about to go in. He's sacrificing warm-up pitches to pull me up, and we meet in the middle. Mark goes, "Hey man, you all right?" And I'm like, I'll be good. He's like, "I'll take some off of it." It was like 94, 95 at the time, right down the gut, and I couldn't catch his ball. And it was like my thumb was sore the next day. But man, it was so much fun. That was one of the best memories I have in baseball because I'll never forget. I mean, it's the first time I caught mid 90s. It was the first time then, and good thing you didn't miss the strike zone because it would have hit me.
That's a wonder because at that time I didn't know where the ball was going. So
it would have hit me right in the face. But it was, I mean, I put my glove up and I didn't move it, and it just hit my glove, and then boom, the glove, the ball, everything just almost knocked me over, and I was like, oh my gosh, all right, here we go. I'm alive.
Well, like I told you from the onset, I've loved you for a long time and super glad and proud of you to see your successes. And once again, I'm sure to the crowd too, or the audience that watches, it's no shock as to why you've had the success you've had. And I wish you all the best.
Thanks,
and
thank you.
You guys can follow Seaton at his IG handle is at Stats95, STATS 95. Find him on Facebook at Seaton Sheldon. And hopefully you guys took the same thing that I did from this conversation. I knew it going into it, but hopefully you saw some of the things that have led to his success and his continued success. And we'll hope you will join us next time on the Mark Big Show. See you soon.